That stock we paid about $10 million for is probably worth $1.5 billion or more today.
In 1973, which may be your first run at the Washington Post, you began to buy shares.
Yeah.
How did you come to the conclusion?
I'd looked at the prospectus in 1971 when Charlie and I first met Kay Graham one time, and they were going public right at the time of the Pentagon Papers. And then in 1973, the stock got very cheap because their television licenses were under challenge by B.B. Rebozo, Nixon's friend, and the stock went from, I think, like 38 to 16 or so in a very short period of time. And when it got down to around 20, just in a few blocks, we bought almost 10% of the company, and that now is about 18% because they've repurchased shares. When it got to about 20, that meant the whole Washington Post company, it had 4,800,000 shares. The whole Washington Post company was selling for $100 million. Now they owned the Washington Post, they owned Newsweek, they owned 4 big network television stations, including CBS in Washington, D.C. and all of that.
Jacksonville, Florida.
I mean, everything, and they didn't owe any money. And if you had taken those separate parts, you literally could have been out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, at midnight in a rowboat, and you could have sold them for $500 million. People have been swimming out in shark-infested waters if necessary.
And you could have had all of it for $100 million.
For $100 million. I mean, you weren't going to get all of it. Because,
Here's what I don't understand. How come 95 people didn't see that?
It was amazing. We were buying it from big institutional investors, and they were bailing out of it. And if you'd asked any one of them what the pieces were worth, they would have said something close to what I would say. But they thought the stock was going to go down. So what? And the stock did go down. In fact, after we bought it, it went down a little more.
So what? Warren Buffett believes that I'm not looking at the price of the stock. I'm looking at the value of the business.
I'm looking at the properties, and I'm looking at the Graham family. I mean, that stock we paid about $10 million for is probably worth $1.5 billion or more today.
And they haven't $10 million, and it's worth $1.5 billion.
And they have not struck oil. They have not invented a cure for cancer. They've just taken those properties and kept doing reasonably intelligent things, and sometimes very intelligent things, with the money generated by it, and they've developed the properties they've had, and they've been terrific stewards of the money, but there's no miracles involved.
Warren bought into the company without my knowing him. That's why I say luck really plays a role in people's lives. It just does. A lot of people said stiff arm him, he's buying too much stock. He means you no good. And my native instinct was, let's take a look. Let's see what he's like. And everything I learned about him was very good. So I asked him to come and take a look at the company in which she'd just bought these shares. He had to write me a letter when he owned 5% of the company saying, "Dear Mrs. Graham, I've just bought 5% of your company, and I mean you no harm. And I think it's a great company, and I know it's Graham owned and Graham run, and that's fine with me." And so I got to know him. And I thought, whoa, this guy's really terrific. So after he joined our board, he used to come to board meetings with about 20 annual reports. And he would take me through these annual reports. I mean, it was like going to business school with Warren Buffett.
Couldn't have a better teacher.
No, it was wonderful.
Kay Graham told me that when she met you, she'd never even understood how to read an annual report. Mm-hmm. That's what you brought to her, some sense of helping her come to grips with the idea of making business decisions.
Kay was very, very smart, but she thought, because this had been pushed into her by her mother and her husband to some extent in the past, she thought only males who had been to business school could run businesses. I mean, she had the intellect, but she didn't have the confidence. And I told her my job was to get her away from looking into that funhouse mirror that she was looking into about herself and distorting it, and looking into a real mirror. And when she looked in a real mirror, she'd see a person that was perfectly capable of running the Washington Post or any other company.
How long did it take her to learn that?
Well, it was, fits and starts over time. But I had the right raw material. I mean, she was good. She was good. And she'd had beaten into her over such a long period of time that wasn't what she could do in life, that it took some convincing, and she had to see evidence of success and all that sort of thing. I said, "Mrs. Graham," I said, "you control this company lock, stock, and barrel, but you're still worried about me." So I said, "What you're doing is you're looking at me and you're seeing fangs, and I'm telling you these are baby teeth." And I said, "They really are baby teeth, but they always look like fangs to you, and there's nothing I can do except take them out. I said, even though they're baby teeth, I'm going to just take them all out. So I'm perfectly willing. You call George Gillespie up here, your lawyer, and I said, I'll sign an agreement that I'll never buy another share of stock of Washington Post unless you give me the okay. And I said, I'm fine. I want you happy with me. I want you nervous about me. And so George came up, and I took out the baby teeth, and she saw fangs falling to the floor, and we got along great ever.
Okay, but you already had
we had
$10 million invested or not?
Yeah, we had $10 million invested. We had 9%, 9 and a fraction percent of the stock. I told her the smart thing is to repurchase your shares. I mean, and the shares I would otherwise buy, you should buy for the company, and we'll all get richer if you do that. And she had a lot of other people advising her otherwise. But she decided to do it, and that's the reason we now own almost 18%, I believe, of the company instead of 9 and a fraction percent. The Buffalo Evening News was bought in 1977,
right.
And I gave Kay first shot at that.
You did what?
I gave Kay first shot at that.
You said, if you don't want to buy it, I'm
going to buy it.
Why would you do that?
I just felt that, she'd been good to me, and we were a big holder, and they were in the newspaper business, and she wanted to buy things. So I just said, I'm not gonna find that I went up to see Vince Mano on a Sunday and bought this thing away from you, so that you otherwise would have bought. So I gave her a shot at it.